was a promise whispered into the ear of a dying nation. A promise to silence the guns, to feed the hungry, to scrub the government clean of its filth. A promise of a new society, a paradise on earth. But this paradise was built on a foundation of secrets, and its price was paid in blood, in freedom, and in truth. By the time the world saw the bill, a nation's soul had already been sold. This is the story of how one man, Ferdinand Marcos, convinced an entire country to trade its liberty for a beautiful lie. It raises a terrifying question we must all confront. What price would you pay for perfect order? You're about to learn how a democracy was surgically dismantled from the inside, not with a bloody coup, but with a symphony of propaganda, fear, and a dream so seductive it felt like salvation. This isn't just a story about the Philippines, it's a timeless warning about the dark allure of the strongman and how the road to hell is paved with promises of heaven. To understand the dream, you must first understand the nightmare. The Philippines of the late 1960s and early 70s was a nation tearing itself apart. The so-called old society was drowning in chaos. In the cities, students, inspired by global unrest, clashed violently with the state. In the countryside, a new communist insurgency, the New People's Army, was gathering strength, promising land to the peasants and a bloody revolution. Crime was rampant. Political dynasties, known as oligarchs, treated the country like their personal property, their private armies settling disputes with bullets, not ballots. The government was a cesspool of corruption. For the average Filipino, life was a daily struggle for survival in a nation that felt broken. Into this chaos stepped a titan, Ferdinand Marcos. He wasn't just a politician, he was a war hero, a brilliant lawyer, and a master strategist with an almost hypnotic charisma. He diagnosed the nation's sickness perfectly, and to a desperate people, he offered a cure. Alongside him was his wife, Imelda. She was the other half of this power couple, the face of beauty, culture, and compassion. Together they crafted an image of a royal family destined to save their people. But there was a voice of dissent. Senator Benigno and Ninoy Aquino Jr. He was Marcos's sharpest critic and his greatest political rival, a man who saw the ambition in Marcos's eyes and warned the world of a coming storm. On August 21, 1971, the storm arrived. During a political rally at Plaza Miranda, 2 grenades were thrown into the crowd. 9 people died, nearly 100 were wounded. This was the inciting incident, the moment that changed everything. Marcos immediately blamed the communists. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus, allowing for warrantless arrests. The air grew thick with fear. The nation was on a knife's edge, and Marcos now had the perfect excuse to push it over. What followed was a year of orchestrated chaos. Bombings rocked Manila, targeting public utilities, government buildings, and businesses. Public anxiety reached a fever pitch. People were terrified. They begged for the government to do something, anything. Years later, evidence would suggest many of these bombings were secretly the work of the military, designed to manufacture the consent of the people for what was to come. The final piece of theater occurred on the night of September 22, 1972. The motorcade of Defense Minister Juan Ponce was allegedly ambushed. He survived without a scratch. It was the last straw Marcos needed, the final justification for seizing absolute power. The next day, the television and radio stations went silent. When they returned, there was only one voice. The new society, Bagong Lipunan, had begun. The beautiful lie was now the law. And at first, it seemed to work. This is the first major twist in the story. This is the part that is often forgotten. The new society delivered on its initial promises. A nationwide curfew was imposed. Crime vanished overnight. Gangsters and political warlords were disarmed. The notoriously chaotic streets of Manila became clean and orderly. The government bureaucracy was purged of corruption. A new national discipline took hold. For many Filipinos exhausted by the chaos of the old society, this was a miracle. It felt like deliverance. The dream was real. But this was only the surface. Here is the second brutal twist. To achieve this new order, the first casualty was truth. All independent newspapers, television, and radio stations were shut down. The only voice left was the voice of the state. Then came the midnight arrests. Political opponents, including Ninoy Aquino, student leaders, journalists, anyone who had ever dared to criticize Marcos were rounded up by the thousands. They were imprisoned without trial. A new vocabulary of fear entered the language. To be salvaged meant to be abducted by state forces and executed, your body dumped in a ditch. Military interrogation centers became chambers of horror. Torture was systematic. Electrocution, waterboarding, beatings. An entire generation was traumatized into silence. The beautiful dream of a disciplined society was in reality a meticulously crafted cage. And the price of admission was your voice, your rights, and for thousands, your life. On the world stage, Marcos projected an image of strength and stability, the Asian strongman who had tamed his nation. Funded by massive foreign loans, Imelda embarked on an extravagant edifice complex, building lavish cultural centers and hospitals. The lie was now being exported. With all opposition crushed, the media controlled, and the economy floating on a sea of debt, the new society looked indestructible. From the peak of their absolute power, it seemed their reign would last 1,000 years. How could a paradise so perfectly constructed ever possibly fail? The answer to that question is simple. A paradise built on lies cannot last, because the foundation is rotten. The new society was a front for a conjugal dictatorship that plundered the nation on an industrial scale. Crony capitalism replaced the old oligarchy with a new one loyal only to Marcos. Billions of dollars in foreign loans and national funds were siphoned into secret Swiss bank accounts. While Imelda was buying priceless art and mountains of shoes, the country was sinking into unimaginable debt. The single event that shattered the illusion for good came on August 21st, 1983. After 3 years in exile, the Marcos' arch-rival, Ninoy Aquino, decided to return to the Philippines. He knew the risks. His friends warned him he would be killed. He famously said, "The Filipino is worth dying for." He never made it off the tarmac. The assassination of Ninoy Aquino was the regime's fatal mistake. It was a crime so brazen, so arrogant, that it jolted the nation from its fearful slumber. The beautiful lie was exposed as an ugly murder. The man who warned of the coming storm had become its ultimate victim, and in death, he became a martyr. The fear that had held the nation captive for over a decade began to melt away, replaced by a cold, burning rage. The endgame came 3 years later. In 1986, Marcos, riddled with illness and hubris, called for a snap election to re-legitimize his rule. He faced Ninoy's widow, Corazon Cory Aquino. Marcos cheated, declaring himself the winner, but the people refused to accept it. Millions poured into the streets in a non-violent protest that stunned the world. They blocked tanks with their bodies. They faced down soldiers with prayers and flowers. In 4 days, the Titan fell. The People Power Revolution forced Ferdinand Marcos and his family into exile, leaving behind a nation bankrupted by a $10 billion debt in a legacy of over 3,000 documented killings and 34,000 cases of torture. The beautiful lie had collapsed. The story of Bagong Lipunan is not just a chapter in a history book. It is a timeless lesson on the seductive nature of power. It teaches us that the desire for order and security is a powerful human instinct. And in times of chaos, It is an instinct that can be twisted and weaponized by leaders who promise a paradise but deliver a prison. The shadow of Marcos's golden age narrative lingers today, a testament to the power of a well-told lie. It's a reminder that history is not just something to be studied, it is a battleground of memory, and forgetting the price of that paradise is the surest way to pay it all over again. Stories like this are a warning from history. They show how easily a beautiful dream can become a collective nightmare. If you want to uncover more of the shadows that define Asia, subscribe to Asian Titans. Because the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves in the dark, hoping for a dawn that will never come.